My name is Katherine Bitner. I write contemporary romance, but I can see myself branching into many different genres because I kind of love all genres.
Welcome to Love Letters and Books, a podcast for anyone who loves a good story. This is a soft space to explore romance and books where no topic is too taboo. I'm your host, Casey, and this week I'm sitting down with author Katherine Bitner. Katherine was one of the very first guests on this podcast when she came on to discuss Unravel Me, the first book in her hometown series, a small-town contemporary romance series set in North Carolina. In today's episode, we're going to discuss Lucky Penny, her forthcoming book, which is book 2 in the hometown series. And we are touching on some big topics today, including trauma, coping mechanisms, second chance romance, and some misconceptions about being child-free by choice. We'll also explore the new direction that Katherine's writing is going to be taking in the next few years. And if you enjoy this episode, I highly recommend you go back and listen to Katherine's first episode where she shared a beautiful love letter. So Katherine, welcome to the Love Letters and Books podcast. I am so glad you're here.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be back. It has been a journey since I saw you last, but it's really awesome to be back here being interviewed by you again.
Well, I always love to hear how people feel after they've heard themselves on a podcast for the first time. So, how did you feel about your last episode talking about Unravel Me and your journey as a writer?
Yeah, it's a very weird experience for me. I think it's like the same as people don't want to watch themselves back if they're on TV. But it was interesting to listen back, and I think that I articulated about Unravel Me better than I thought I did in the moment. Because afterwards I was like, no one's gonna know what I'm talking about. And then I listened back and I'm like, okay, this was okay.
No, I really feel like people tend to black out emotionally
Yes.
while they're on a podcast. Most people say, I have no idea what I talked to you about. I'm just going to trust that it sounds okay.
Yeah.
So, well, I'm really glad that you came back and are joining us again. I have been following along on your journey of Lucky Penny. And I say following along, I've been watching your posts on social media and just sort of absorbing all the little tidbits you're sharing about this book that I'm really looking forward to. So, for anyone listening, this is the second book in the Hometown series. It's the follow up to Unravel Me. And Katherine, I just want to dive in. Can you tell us a little bit about this book?
Yes. So I am very, very excited about this book. It's the first time I have wrote a spin-off. This is the book 2 in the Hometown series, but it's an interconnected standalone. So if you didn't read Unravel Me, you can pick up Penny's story and fall right in line with the characters. You won't miss anything. But if you did read Unravel Me and you fell in love with the main character's best friend, Penny, which I personally did as a writer, then you just get a continuation of her awesomeness. And so this is her love story. It is a second chance love story. It is dual timeline, dual point of view. So it has flashbacks to her high school days when she first fell in love with Jesse, who is the male main character. And so it gives you that duality between young Penny that you didn't get to see in Unravel Me and where she is now. And it just feels like a really good transition from the end of the first book in the series.
Oh, I love that. I'm so excited that you're giving us a bit more of her origin story because I feel like for readers of Unravel Me, we instantly liked and loved her. We thought she was a really strong character, but you actually don't know much about her. So this is going to be quite an experience for us. So is there anything you can share about who she is as a character, as a person, as a woman that we wouldn't have known just by reading Unravel Me?
Yeah, definitely. So I think on the surface, you see Penny in Unravel Me, and she is that fun, bubbly, fierce friend who is Audrey's ride or die best friend. She will take a bullet for you. She is feisty and a fighter. And there's a little bit of a mention that she doesn't talk about her past. And it's kind of a fleeting thought, but I really wanted to dive into that. So you'll see in Lucky Penny that Penny has tried to move on from her past. She moved out of her hometown of Wilmington and she left it all behind. And when she met Audrey, she didn't tell her anything that happened to her previously because she was really scarred by it. And she has a rough upbringing, but she is kind of the sunshiny person, which is what she chooses. But she has a lot of inner demons that she deals with. And I think this was such an important and special character for me because I think just as a woman, we're expected to kind of have this sunshiny persona and be really strong all the time and take care of things. And that is what you see on the surface level of Penny. And then I dig really deep and she becomes a little bit, I don't want to say unlikable, but she's rough and gritty. It's exposing like what's really going on behind the surface, what she hasn't dealt with. And so I think I wanted to show that you can't judge a book by its cover. You know, it might be like this cute, bubbly little blonde girl who's always in pink, but she has some real trauma that she's dealing with under the surface.
Oh, that sounds so powerful and honestly very relatable. And I think for anyone listening who's had that moment where they felt like their outsides didn't match their insides, which is something that happens a lot and we almost don't give space for, we almost tend to focus on the outside. As long as the
Yeah.
outside looks good, we don't have to go much deeper. And I also love that you're inviting us into this character and showing that there's so much more behind the mask. And I think it's just a really good reminder for readers that there is so much more to us because we can almost convince ourselves as women, as people, that, what we present to the world or what is getting digested by the world is the end all be all. And we all have those layers. So I'm really excited to learn more about her and to get to know, especially with that dual timeline. I love a good flashback. I love a good origin story. I always
Yes.
like to know those little nuanced moments that change us, that make us tick, that we can almost overlook. And sometimes it can be the smallest interaction with someone and it changes your life forever. And so I'm really excited about that.
It was my first time writing this dual timeline, and I fell in love with being able to write the origin story. It just made it so much stronger. And I think Penny might be the strongest character I've written and met because of that. Because you just see all these little things that happen to her. And then you start reading the now. So it's a now and then timeline. You'll read the now and you're like, oh, this makes so much sense. Of course she's reacting like this. It just makes it so much more relatable and stronger because we've all had those things that just like are catalyst in our life or change something. And you don't always get that in a book. You don't always get that origin story. So it's really cool to be able to include that.
And I think the impact it has on the reader is that it reminds us that it's okay to drop into our own stories.
Mhm.
Because sometimes through self preservation, I feel like we almost overlook parts of our own journeys. And maybe I'm just speaking from the eye, but you don't want to be inconvenient to the world, right? Like,
Yeah.
especially women. We're almost like put in this situation where, like, don't disrupt anything with your trauma or your challenges or something that harmed you. It's like, just get with the program and keep going. And so sometimes when there's stories like this where we get to drop into what made someone who they are,
Yeah.
it's a really good reminder that we're allowed to do that as well in our own lives. Like, it's not, oh, you've reached this plateau, you've gotten beyond it, you never have to think about it again. It's like, no, I can process, how did this affect me? And maybe that changes 5 years out, 10 years out, 20 years out as we move through the life cycle, right? Like, it's
Yeah.
not the same. It's not this static thing. I think in my own life, I think about things that happened to me when I was much younger and I reflect on them so differently now. And you can either see the pain or the value or the, oh, I wish I had done this instead, which maybe I wasn't aware of at the time. So
Yeah.
anyway, this is basically turning into my therapy session, Catherine. Thank you
No, I
so much
love
for
it.
having this conversation.
This book was so therapeutic for me to write. So, no, I absolutely love this.
Well, I'm so excited to revisit with Penny, but now I'm really curious about your main male character because you've been involving people on social media and getting feedback and kind of sprinkling little tidbits about him throughout the last few months. But let's explore. Let's talk about
Yeah.
him. Tell us who he is, what makes him tick.
Okay. So I love him. If you can love a fictional character, his name is Jesse, and he's a brand new character. He is not from Unravel Me. And in a sense, he is kind of coming back from the grave in this book. It is not a surprise. This is not a spoiler that there's a 10-year gap between when Penny last saw him and when he appears in the book. So 10 years of time have gone by, and a lot has happened to Jesse in that time. He is a very, very like kind, calm, collected man, but he comes from like a very traumatic past as well. And I wanted to explore how different it was, how him and Penny thrived in different ways, how he took his trauma and grew up with it and did something totally different than how she handled it. She kind of masked it and just pretended nothing existed. And Jesse is the guy who kind of wore it on his sleeve. So you'll see that he is a tattooed, like head to toe character, and his entire life story is tattooed on him. And he's not hiding any of it. And he kind of just wears his pain out there and he wants to heal it. And I think it was really like cathartic for me to write him because I'm kind of the same way where I wear my story. I don't have tattoos everywhere, but like if I was that kind of person, that is something I would do because I think it's very important to share things. And he also, just on a personal note, he is someone I would love because he is an animal rescuer. So he's this very tough, almost scary looking man, but his like life purpose and the things he loves to do is to rescue animals. So it's again with that like don't judge a book by its cover. I love this character.
Well, I can't wait to meet him. But the first thought I had when you're sharing about him is how confronting it can be when you have moved through trauma a certain way and then you collide with someone who's handling it a completely different way. And it can just be so disruptive in a powerful way, in a cathartic way. But it can be really challenging when you come face to face with someone who's navigating it in a different way, especially when you're masking and you're kind of pretending that that didn't happen. And then you're sharing about a character who's just wearing it on his body, he's living
Yeah.
it, he's moving through it. And I think that that collision is actually not a negative thing. I think it's really beautiful and powerful, and we're so lucky when our paths intersect with those people who can be mirrors in a way. Not that they've got it figured out and we don't, but like we can look at each other and start to process things in a different way. Because if we've almost had, I guess I'm envisioning almost like the shutters down, right? And we're
Yes.
not looking out the window of our life and someone comes by and just by their actions or just the way that they move, they live, they talk, it's like they open those shutters and something's illuminated.
Yeah.
And that's really challenging in real life when that happens. So I wonder if it's just going to be smooth sailing for these two in your book when they collide 10 years after. I'm sure that there's no challenges that they have to overcome in any way.
Right. No, it's smooth. They fall back in love instantly. And I will
Yeah.
say that is, yeah, that you hit it right on the head, the nail on the head, where Penny is shuttered off and she thinks everything is fine. And Jesse is like, let's talk about it. And it's just that like collision that sends Penny into a spiral. And I think we've all been there where we want to just avoid and act like everything is fine. And someone keeps asking, are you okay? Are you sure? And then finally the waterfall opens. And you'll see that for Penny. And I think it makes people a little uncomfortable. And I only know this because my beta readers have said that. But it's so necessary. And it is like that mirror being held up. And you just, sometimes you have to peel back those layers and really take a look at yourself.
You know, I worked with someone years ago when I ran a cancer support center, and he was a Qigong practitioner. And he would tell me that one of the really interesting things he saw when he was working with people, you think that we're only going to be reactive when
Mhm.
something negative happens. And he said the most reactive we are is when something really positive happens. And it almost makes us look back at our whole life and reflect on things. So almost like when love walks in the room, it reveals to you everything that love is not. And it almost reminds you of like, why didn't I have this? Why didn't someone else treat me this way? Why wasn't I given this? Why didn't I have this opportunity? Why didn't I get to feel that way? And that can almost be more confronting than when something really challenging happens because we're almost programmed with like a negativity bias of,
Mhm.
well, I'll survive, I'll get through it. But when something beautiful happens and an invitation to reflect on the self is something beautiful, right? Like to
Yeah.
say, hey, it's safe enough now to reflect on your life, but that it almost reminds you of all the times in your life when it didn't feel safe to reflect on those things, or
Yeah.
you didn't have someone who could like just sit with you or be with you or kind of met you in that space and wasn't like, "Oh, you're being inconvenient, you're making me uncomfortable," or "This is too much." When someone's like, "Oh, no, I'm right here with you." And by the way, I have not read the book. I'm just saying we're
No.
talking in general about
Yeah.
this stuff.
As you're saying that, it's just like light bulbs all over. I think that's amazing. And that rings so true. I just like, even in my personal life. Yeah. Yeah. I'm speechless. 'Cause I think it's so accurate. And it's just like another angle that I didn't think of when I was writing it, but I think it's very accurate.
That's what books do. I feel like they invite us into this very structured space outside of our own story where we get
Mhm.
to drop in and reflect on these things. It's why I love reading so much because, yes, we can process the things that have happened to us, but sometimes it's almost an invitation to drop into an emotional space to connect with the feelings versus the facts. And I
Yeah.
think sometimes we can get really weighed down by facts, but I've read books even Audrey's book, right? Where you're dropping into this person who's on this journey and you get to drop into your own journey, but the situation doesn't have to be the same. It can just surface the real feelings. And sometimes we can intellectualize ourselves out of the feelings. So that's why stories are so powerful. We can drop into that space with this other person. They can almost shepherd us through the emotional journey. So that's what I get out of it. So now that we have these two together, what would you say is the thing that they want more than anything? Like, is
I
there something collective that they, something that they agree on that they connect on?
Yes. So the story itself is super layered and intertwined. They both really want to heal, but they want to heal in different ways and they don't realize it's kind of the same. And so they both care so much about their families. Their families, the center of their worlds, and they want to heal their families. And they come from the same family, which they are not related, but Jesse, and this is not giving it away. You find out all of this in the first 2 pages of the book, but Jesse was Penny's foster brother in high school. Her grandma took him in and he was her best friend. So she invited him to live with him and so her family became his family. And a lot of trauma happened, a lot of estrangement, and they both really want to heal that. They both want to be like the hero in their own story, and they don't see that. They don't see that they're both fighting for that position. It almost could be, it's not miscommunication, but it's them not seeing that they're on each other's side because they're not enemies, they're teammates.
Oh, Catherine, we could do an entire episode about that because I notice that happens so often. It's like you can love someone and be on their side, but it can
Mhm.
be a really lonely position because they're not even on their side or
Right.
they don't know that you're there. They're not making space for you there. And so you can be rooting for someone, their biggest champion, want the best for them, but you're almost like, why am I here alone? Why aren't you here with me doing this for yourself as well? Like I want you to feel that. So and I'm not necessarily saying that happens in this book. It just happens in relationships
Yes. Yeah.
sometimes. And it's like you have to kind of wait them out until they're on their own side as well. I'm also thinking of like allowing yourself to be the full spectrum of who you are.
Mhm.
Like you don't just have the burden of being the hero and saving everyone. Like you can be scared, soft, vulnerable. You can want more. You can be curious. You can be uncertain. Like allowing yourself to have that full scope experience, I think can
Yes.
be really powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, definitely. And all of these themes are in this book. I like to say it's a simple book that I wrote. The plot itself, there's not a lot of twists and turns and drama, but the emotional journey that these people go on, it's like 6 months worth of therapy through one book. That's what I like to say.
Well, I, for one, am ready for that. So I'm really excited about this. And then, you know, I always watch everything you share on social media. I think you're a really generous contributor, whether you're sharing about your own books or about the genre or about what it is to be a writer. But one of the things that I noticed when you were talking about this book is that there is an element of these two characters being child free by choice.
Mhm.
And that has been such a big topic in the book world. I've seen so many people talking about it on threads. And the question you see put out there is, oh, does everyone have to end up in the epilogue pregnant or with a baby? Now, before we go any further, I do want to say something because it's so easy to misinterpret in these conversations.
Yeah.
That is beautiful and wonderful and healing in and of itself. And sometimes you absolutely want that in a story. The reason I'm bringing it up is because to shine a light or create a story, hold space for readers who might be on that journey themselves. And what that can look like is really beautiful and powerful. And I feel like you're making room for them there where they don't feel excluded. So now that I have stepped off my soapbox, I would love to talk to you about that of what was it like to decide to write that type of an ending, which you've been very transparent
Mhm.
about. And what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah. So this is something I've been wanting to do from the first book I wrote because I have been child free by choice for a while. And a lot of books that I have read just didn't have that inclusion. And I've always looked for that. And it doesn't bother me as a reader that an ending doesn't end how my own life would end. But I think everyone deserves a space in the book world. And so I have just been waiting for the right characters to come along to be able to include that. And I knew Penny is very much like me. And so I knew naturally that would be what she wanted in life. She would want to be child free. And the kind of partner Jesse is he loves Penny and he wants whatever Penny loves. Another element of this book that you'll see, and this has been already shared, is that Penny is to become an aunt. And I think in a lot of child free spaces, it can be all or nothing, but that's not how it always is in real life. And so she is a maternal person. She's raised her sister. She is like the aunt of the year. She loves her, but that is not something she chooses for herself. And I think that's the case with a lot of women that I have met. They love children, but they don't want them in their own life. And I think sharing that in the book, it was hard for me to write that. I was very afraid of the pushback I might get, but the overwhelming response from people who have said, "Oh my gosh, finally a book that I feel represented in," just the amount of comments I have got there has made it all worth it. Like I will take the criticism because I know that somebody's going to read this book and feel validated. And that means everything to me.
I really appreciate one that you put in the book, but two that you're willing to talk about it. Because one of the things that I have noticed throughout my life is that and I don't think people do this on purpose, I don't think people are aggressively trying to be mean, but there's almost this assumption that if you don't have children, that you're not warm, that you're not maternal, that you hate babies or something. Like there's this
Yeah.
very bizarre assumption. And I have heard the full range of unsolicited feedback in my own life about these things. And I love that you're talking about this because it's not that she's anti children or that she's not warm or that she doesn't want the family and the connection. She's just building it in a way that would work for her. And I also think that, and again, this is I think I've said, I think so many times. So I'm going to be aware of that. But I do think it's interesting in society how we almost minimize the extended family, the found family, the
Mhm.
people that contribute to shaping us and our upbringing, and how powerful those roles can be, whether it's an aunt or an uncle, cousins, friends, all of those things. And I wonder what that is, like that forced individualism versus community and how powerful that can be for both parties. So I think that it's impactful for Penny to be an aunt, but it's also impactful for the kids in her life that she touches, right?
Yeah.
And she's showing up in her full self in that way, in a way that feels most authentic to her. and it's not minimized. It's not an afterthought. It's sort of her and her true expression.
Yeah. And I think the last thing I'll say about that is I made her very loud and proud about being child free. I wanted to strip away any shame, any hesitation.
More.
She is vocal about it. She's vocal about supporting her sister through her pregnancy, and she's vocal to Jessie about what she wants. Because I think it's something that a lot of women try to hide. They just don't talk about it. They just hope no one asks and they won't talk about it. And I know I was like that for a while, personally, as just me. And so I wanted to put in that book that she is not ashamed of her choice and that you can see in the book she's an amazing person. So I just wanted to strip that stigma away, I think, as much as I could through a fictional romance.
And I have no doubt it will be so impactful for people because so often shame is the currency women
Mhm.
are expected to engage with to exist outside the quote unquote norm. So it's okay and acceptable as long as we're ashamed about it.
Right.
And I love when we're in spaces, whether it's in real life or in fiction, where we're touching on that and saying, no, it's really okay if you're this way and you're not ashamed of it. It's okay if you've made a choice and you lean into it and you trust it and you just live it. And when we do that, it might sound silly, but it's an invitation for the next woman who picks up that book to find something that she wants to live authentically with. And she doesn't feel like she has to exchange that currency of shame
Yeah.
beforehand. So I'm just really excited to get to know her more and to learn more about her journey. And I'm really excited that you're expanding this series because, and I want to touch on this, I
Yeah.
love the world you built. And you know this because
Yeah.
I've talked to you about this a million times. I love this North Carolina world that you built. You know that I want to move there. And I
Yes.
think that you and I should do a house swap. But
Yes.
tell us more about this world that you've created because I also saw that you did sort of like the Penny tour and you went and stopped at all of the stops in North Carolina that
Yeah.
you were kind of envisioning in the book. So tell us more about this world.
Yeah. So Penny's story takes place in an actual town, unlike Unravel Me, which was a fictional based on a small town in North Carolina that is real, but it was largely fabricated. But Penny lives in Wilmington, which is a very real coastal town in North Carolina. And so that was really cool to go visit and see it all. And like it just brought what I was writing to life for me. You know, I love North Carolina. There's no like not seeing that. When you look at my profile, I talk about it a lot. All my books take place here. And I think just creating this world where these characters, as it's, you know, a play in words, the hometown. So they're all in their towns that they have found home in or their original hometown, like Penny. And I think there's just something really, I don't know, really cool about that, about creating this world. And I will say there's going to be a third book that's in the works, and it is also in North Carolina, and it's a spinoff from a character you'll meet in Lucky Penny. But I love this world too, and I just want to keep going with it as long as I can, as long as I can find inspiration.
Good, because it's kind of tiding me over until I make some big cross-country moves.
Yes.
Well, the other thing I wanted to touch on about this book is the power of a second chance romance, the impact of reuniting with people, crossing paths with people later in life. And I almost feel like there's this assumption that we just kind of pick up where we left off, but so much time has passed. We've grown, we've changed, we've had experiences, we've had relationships, and you're always hoping there's some level of maturity that's happened.
Yes.
So when I'm thinking about that, I'm thinking the opportunity to reflect, to take ownership, take accountability, to create a better mask, to shirk
Yeah.
responsibility, to make amends, to course correct. Like we can take any path we want. But how does that specifically show up in this book? Like, what did those years
Mhm.
offer your two main characters?
Yeah. Oh, such a good question. So when they see each other and it's been 10 years, they've had no contact for 10 years. So they have absolutely no idea what happened to each other from the last time they saw each other. And that was really cool to be able to play off of because they make assumptions right away and their appearances have changed. Everything has changed. Jesse is mature. Jesse has matured and grown up from when he was a young man. And Penny has two, but she has a different reaction to seeing him again. It evokes an immaturity in her, and she almost reverts back to being the 18-year-old girl that he left. So she goes back to that because she never fully processed their departure from each other. And he is still that almost 30-year-old man that wants to fix things. And so I wanted to show that because I think that could be a very real reaction for someone, seeing someone from their past and just kind of reverting back to who they were when they knew them.
Yeah.
But just having that second chance, I think on like a writing level, it really helped me pull from more than like they're not strangers. It's not strangers to lovers. Like they knew each other. So the emotional depth of their conversation, of things they remembered, there was just so much to pull on. And I think it made their bond very believable. And you can see right away why they were in love originally.
Oh, oh, you're giving me so much to think about because I'm also, as you're talking, I'm thinking about how in real life, we also have to be willing to allow people to grow and change. And sometimes we need to take accountability that, like, we're the thing that's stopping that because it's our perception. Like, we
Yeah.
almost want to, like, meet them where they were. And in my own life, I always laugh about this. I'm in my 40s. I'll cross paths with someone that I knew in like elementary school or junior high, and they're like shocked that I have a job. I'm like, yeah, I'm an I'm an adult. I've had many jobs. I actually have quite a few jobs right now. I have a whole house that I live in,
Yes.
because it takes a while for your brain or your emotions to catch up and to say, oh, you've been a fully formed human being in that time that I didn't know you. And so I think that that's an interesting reflection as well, to say that we're participants in that. It's not just that someone else has to perform for us and show us who they are. It's like we also have to be willing to meet them where they are now and
Yeah.
to allow who they are to shine through. And if we keep kind of living in the past or bringing up the past, we're the one holding it back because we haven't allowed some natural evolution, right? Like,
Right.
yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Catherine, I am so appreciative that you've been so generous with your time and talking about Lucky Penny. Now I want to know, who are you reading and what are you writing? So can you give us a little insight into kind of your inner world?
Yeah. So right now, like a lot of the book world, I have been sucked into the series, The Voice of Tommen. I don't know. Have you read that?
Yes, I have
Okay.
been on a deep, life-changing, cathartic journey with
Yes.
that, and maybe we should talk about that together.
Yeah. It was unexpected. I was like, this is just a little teenage romance, something light to get me through the summer. I've only read the first four books. I just finished Joey and Etho's. I'm unwell. So I haven't been able to go on to the next book. It's been 2 weeks and I'm just not ready yet. But that series has like changed my perspective about just the genre in general and has like given me the courage to dig a little deeper in my writing because I think Chloe Walsh is like a master of teenage emotions. And I'm obsessed with all things Boys of Tommen.
I think she's really brave, and I have so much appreciation for her because, as someone who very much related to Shannon's story, I walked into that book completely unprepared and had, again, I thought, oh, well, I love reading. Let me be very well versed. I'm going to just pick up this book and sure, it'll be about rugby or something. I had
Yeah.
no idea. I go into a lot of things blind, to be honest.
Yeah.
And then it took me on this journey. Some of the things that stood out to me was that I felt really safe on that journey with that author because she was being really compassionate and clear and just courageous with the spaces she was going to go into that story. And I've talked about it with several people in my life who also had very similar experiences to Shannon.
Yeah.
And it brought up a lot for all of us. And someone could listen to this and think it's really ridiculous. It's a book about kids in high school. How does that impact you? Well, those were some of the most traumatic years of our lives for some of us. And our families were the perpetrators. And there's not a lot of space in the world to talk about that, to be
Yeah.
honest, as an adult, because the response that you very often get is, well, you're an adult now, get over it. Or
Right.
it's not happening anymore, so move on. And what Chloe did was invite us into that house, that burning house, and how unsafe someone could feel and what that would look like in the rest of their life, right? There's
Yeah.
not a lot of compassion of this is what these kids are dealing with at night. And then they have to go to school and be
Mhm.
friends and have activities and think about college. And they're just trying to survive
Right.
day to day. And so I really, as a reader, was so appreciative that she went there. It brought so much to the surface. And one of the things that was so challenging, but like very beautifully done in that story, I thought,
Yeah.
was the nuanced look at Marie, the mom,
Mhm.
because she was complicit. She was also young when she had kids. She
Yeah.
was also abused. It's very layered. And so
Yeah.
that's what I appreciated was that it was so nuanced. And you balance that fear and frustration with compassion and understanding and forgiveness. I so obviously, as I'm going on, it brought so much to the surface, but it also reminded me how healing we can be with one another and the importance of seeing people in your life and showing up for them and connecting with them and, like, just giving them that space to decompress,
Yeah.
which I felt like the Kavanaughs really did
Yes.
for a lot of people in their lives, and I can't believe I forgot to ask you about that initially because I was seeing you post about it on social media, and I was like, "I need to talk to Katherine
Yeah.
about this because
I
I've been on
know.
this life-changing journey with this book."
I know. When I was started reading them, I was like, I feel like a teenage girl, but I think if I would have read that series as a teenager, I wouldn't have appreciated it at all. And now when I read it, the book is so powerful. And it was such a powerful series for me to read. Like I said, I'm not done with it, but it made me really pause and reflect on my own writing because there are a lot of stories I've started to write. And then I felt like there's no way I can put this out in the world. This is too either revealing or not enough people will resonate with this. This is my own struggle, even if it's in a character. And after reading The Boys of Tommen, it gave me just that extra push I needed to see how many people across the world have resonated with these books on some level. And so the next book series I am starting, it's not young adult because I wouldn't consider Boys of Tommen young adult, but it's in that genre that you could enjoy as an adult or a younger person, but the characters are end of high school. It's darker, it's heavier, but it's just so true to what those years really feel like. It's not romanticized and fabricated. It's just a gritty look. And I have like never been so excited to write something. And I know it's going to be challenging, but I also know it's going to connect with a lot of people. So that
Yeah.
that will be coming hopefully towards the end of 2026.
I'm so happy to hear you say that, and I just wanna say to you as, like, an internet friend, a
Yeah.
reader, all of these things that I just really hope you feel strong in dropping into those spaces and telling those stories because they really do help people. They heal people, they bring things to the surface, and they also make people brave to look at
Yes.
their own stories and to drop into that emotional space that they locked inside and decided, I can never touch that again.
Yeah.
Which is why I feel like Chloe Walsh's writing resonates so much with people is because she's taking you to that space that you said, I'm never going to think about that again. And she's saying it's okay to think about it. I think it's so beautiful that you're willing to step into that space. And, just as a reader, I know the compassionate way that you build your characters and you tell your stories. So I feel like that is such a gift for readers. And
Thank you.
I can't wait for that series. So obviously, you have to come back on and we
Yes,
have to
I
talk
will.
about it.
I will. Thank
Great.
you for saying
Good. Oh,
that.
I'm so excited. Yeah, no, I really feel that way. So, Catherine, I am so thrilled that you are here with us today and talking about this. I cannot wait till Lucky Penny comes out. Can you give us a few details about
Mhm.
the launch?
Yes. So it comes out on October 8th and it'll be available on Kindle Unlimited, paperback. And there are going to be two different covers, a discrete and an illustrated cover. And it is also available to pre order from my website. And if you pre order it, you get a bunch of like custom reader swag that correlates with the book.
Amazing. And I'd also just like to say to anyone listening, Katherine has a newsletter that she sends out every once in a while. So
Yes.
you should definitely sign up to that for updates. And if you enjoyed this episode, we have a previous episode where Katherine really went deep on her book, Unravel Me, which I loved, which introduced me to her as a writer. And if you are interested in learning more about Katherine, I will make sure to put links to all of her social media, website, and everything in the show notes. So I encourage you to take a look at that as well. So, Katherine, thank you so much for being with us today. It was such a good chat with you.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited and I can't wait to hear this.
Good. All right. We'll talk soon.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Love Letters and Books, a podcast for anyone who loves a good story. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to follow, rate, and review this podcast on your favorite listening platform. You can find me on both Instagram and TikTok at Love Letters and Books. And if you're interested in being a guest on Love Letters and Books, suggesting your favorite author, or just want to write in an original love letter to yourself or someone else to be read on air, please send me an email at lovelettersandmixtapes@gmail.com.